Bledsoe to speak to his proposed amendment. Councillor, and I'm suggesting we have limited, well, no debate actually. Actually, no, I will say that I did say to Councillor Penhale-Thomas before the start of the break that I would bring him in first. So apologies, Councillor Bledsoe. I will bring in Councillor Penhale-Thomas first, but I won't bring anyone else in. After that, I'll go back to Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Penhale-Thomas, please.
Oh, you'll be pleased to know, Mr. Deputy Mayor, the point is long gone, so I'm not going to prolong this meeting any further.
I'm very pleased, and apologies I didn't bring you in before the break. Councillor Bledsoe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. After a brief chat with the monitoring officer and the head of department, I would like to make the amendment to read that the budget that is set aside for that is discounted, but that a budget is allowed that will provide the absolute legal minimum requirement sign writing on the vehicle, and that the director of the department will work on that and then assign any monies left over back into the pot that we don't have, which will probably need to be finessed rather than the way I've worded it.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Bledsoe. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Happy to.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so a number of people
Yes.
seconding that. Thank you. Leader, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think that's a way forward with the amendment. I agree. It's something that ideal delivery, what was on there was to have, education enforcement, and, we are one of the best in Wales and the best in the world for recycling, but accept the fact where we are financially, we need to cut back whatever we can cut back. So I think going for the basic delivery, we'll still have BCBC on there. It'll have what's required with legislation. People will know the vehicles are BCBC. What you want to have the education enforcement signed and the stuff to let people know all the good work that's going on. But that's something part and parcel going forward, things we need to double check on. So I think it's a way forward, and the main thing is getting these vehicles, get the order placed, and we have more efficient vehicles running by October or the autumn of this year, and providing a good service to the people at the county borough.
Okay, thank you for that, Leader. Is everyone in agreement with that, please?
Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you. Yeah.
Aye.
I'll accept that as a yes then. And
You need to know to approve the.
yeah.
Aye.
We also, alongside that proposed amendment's been agreed by everyone. There are, of course, other recommendations. Is everyone in agreement with those other recommendations as well as the proposed? Yes. Thank you, colleagues. In which case, we will now move on to the third report from the Chief Officer for Finance, Housing and Change, and that is our Treasury Management Outturn Report for 2023 to 2024. And I will invite Caris to present this report. Caris, please.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Deputy Mayor, the purpose of the report is to comply with the requirement of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy to provide an overview of the Treasury management activities for the last financial year and to report on the indicators for that year. Treasury management is the management of the Council's cash flows, borrowing and investment, and the associated risks. The Council is exposed to financial risk, and therefore the successful identification, monitoring and control of that risk are central to the Council's prudential financial management. The Treasury Management Strategy for 2023-24 was approved by Council on the 1st of March 23. The report outlines the economic context within which the Treasury management activities did take place last year. The issues included that during the year the inflation rate in the UK did drop. At the start of the year the inflation rate was 8.7% and it ended the year at 3.2%. This was still above the Bank of England's target of 2%. At the start of the financial year the bank rate was 4.25%. The bank rate was increased to 5.25% in August and has remained at that level to the end of the financial year. The Council's Treasury management activities are undertaken in line with the requirements of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. And our Treasury management activities were reported to the Governance and Audit Committee, Cabinet and Council throughout the last financial year. A summary of our Treasury management activities during last year is shown in Appendix A to the report that you have. Table 1 in the report summarises the Council's position with regards to its external debt and its investments. Just to summarise that, there was no long-term debt taken out during the year. No debt was rescheduled during the year, as there were no financial benefits to the Council to do this. We will keep this under review in the current financial year. There was a small decrease in the number of Salex interest-free loans that the Council has, and the Council did have some short-term borrowing of £5 million at the end of the financial year for cash flow purposes, and I can confirm that's since been repaid in the new financial year. The total external borrowing that the Council was managing was £104.6 million at the end of March. £99.6 million of that was long-term, with the balance of £5 million being the short-term borrowing that I've already mentioned. The average interest paid on that debt was 4.78%. The balance of investments at the year end was £50 million. This is a reduction of £24.5 million as compared to the previous March. The average interest rate earned on those investments was 5.02%. I think it's important to note that that drop in the investments is a result of us starting to spend our way through our earmarked reserves, and that's now beginning to show because we no longer have that level of money to invest. And the income being earned via these investments has been increasing in the year because the base rate was higher during the year. Just to reassure you that when we're investing the Council's monies, due regard is given to the security and liquidity of those investments, so we want to be sure that they're secure and that also we can retrieve them if we need to quickly. And those are the key priorities before going after the highest rate of return on our monies. The Treasury Management Code requires the Council to set and report on a number of Treasury management indicators. The indicators either summarise the expected activity or introduce limits upon that activity. And details of the estimates for 2023-24 are set out in the Council's Treasury Management Strategy, and comparing those to the actual year-end figure is shown in the appendix. These details indicate for you that the Council operated within those approved limits throughout the last financial year. So, if I may, Deputy Mayor, I'll take you to section 9 of the report, where it's recommended that Council notes the Treasury management activities during the last financial year, and also that you note the actual Treasury management indicators for the period ending the 31st of March 2024 against those approved in the Treasury management strategy for the last financial year. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caris. Can I have a mover and seconder for the report, please, before we begin the debate?
Move.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Llewellyn Hopkins. So we'll now bring in Councillor Simon Griffiths. Councillor Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question really is about the amount of headroom we have within our capital budget and within our financing for a investor return. So what I'm thinking of here is whether we might have programs where we can, for example, purchase property which we then rent out, or other similar schemes where we get immediate revenue for our investment. So I wondered, in terms of the liability benchmark and other features in the Treasury, what's the view of officers about whether we have headroom to invest for return, please?
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. I'll bring in the Chief Officer for Finance. Caris, please.
This does link us back really to the last report on the capital programme and the reducing resources that we have. Within the revenue budget that we have to finance our capital expenditure, in other words, to repay debt, that there is no headroom in there. So if we were to borrow anything now, that would be an extra hit on the revenue account because there is no money within that capital financing revenue budget any longer. Saying that, we are able to borrow money, and if we can put together a business case that would indicate that the borrowing for costs would be more than covered by any income or anything else that we might derive from that, or indeed any savings that we could generate as a result of that investment, then we can certainly borrow to do that. I would just remind members, though, we're not allowed to borrow just for commercial gain. We can borrow if we're enhancing a service, and a subsequent issue for that is that we save on the revenue account, but we cannot borrow just for financial gain.
If I may have a follow-up, if I may, Deputy Mayor, and that is for situations like our homeless problem, where we are spending large amounts of money on bed sits and others for homeless people. Would it therefore be both allowed and reasonable for us to purchase property which we then use to reduce the amount of hotel expenditure?
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Carys, please.
If we can generate a business case that says yes, that would reduce our revenue spend, we could. We do have some money already in the capital programme, actually around some Section 106 monies that we have used and we can continue to use to do that. The only other thing we need to be careful about that is that this council does not have a housing revenue account. So there is a limit to the number of houses that we can, or residential properties that we can own before we have to apply to the Minister to actually be set up as a housing revenue account. So that will be slightly more technical than just whether or not we can borrow. But certainly we could borrow if there was a business case to suggest that it would bring us revenue savings and that we were okay with that legislation around the housing revenue account.
Good, thank you for that, Carys. Next we have Councillor Jenkins, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. It's addressed obviously to the financial officer there, and I'd like to thank her for a comprehensive report. And for bear in mind, I'm only a layperson. My question is based around, though, our investments and money that we have set aside, etc. It's just basically, is it prudent, given our situation at the moment, to have this amount of money in investments, given that that I just mentioned the situations we find ourselves in? And I ask this because some of my residents are asking the question as well. If there is money in reserves and there's money in investment as well, and we're finding things hard, we have to pull down. Now, in line, as I mentioned earlier, I think on Monday, given the government's ideal situation is, particularly the Department Works and Pensions, and all the way along the line, people that require assistance and help from a government and a government agency are always told, if you have money above a certain level, you must spend that first before you can seek any other help. But I know it's a different situation with the council, but I'm just wondering, the question I'm trying to ask is basically, is it prudent or is it absolutely necessary to have this money in investments? And I understand, as the finance officer said earlier in the week, that once the money's gone, it's gone. But of course, that applies to everybody in life. If you use your savings, you've used your savings. You cannot put all those back in one go. I appreciate that. But I wonder if you could enlighten me this, and I'm sorry for dragging all my members out on that, but it's a question I need to be happy with in my mind to tell others when I'm questioned, the necessity for having money invested. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Carys, please.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Jenkins. The money that we have invested is the earmarked reserves that we have. So, and those reserves have been earmarked because there have been policy decisions in the past that these are important issues for the council that we will want to fund in the future. So the investments and the earmarked reserves are obviously closely linked. As I said, our investments have dropped considerably from March 23 to March 24, and that's as a result of us pulling down on those reserves. As in an earlier report, we talked about pulling down the reserves to balance that revenue budget. I think the important thing to say, and you've already touched on it really, Councillor Jenkins, is that we can review those reserves, and we may decide that some of the priorities that were important 18 months ago or 3.5 years ago are no longer important to the council, and you don't want those to fund those priorities. However, what I have to say to you is the reason that those reserves have dropped is because of the overspend on the revenue position. If you start releasing those reserves, I have to be able to balance that budget, and therefore we have to bring down the base budget, and therefore you cannot use those reserves for anything that would be a long-term commitment. There are also things like the council fund in there, which is like our working balance. We have to have that working balance as a local authority to be able to buffer against anything that may happen during the year. And as I said as well in an earlier report, we've already reduced our council fund to a level that I would really be advising you it shouldn't be going anywhere lower than that at the current time. So just to summarise, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Jenkins, the reserves and the investments are obviously linked. And you may choose to not use those earmarked reserves in the way that you've prioritised them, but as you've already said tonight, once you've spent that money, it's gone.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification, Caris. Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Next, we'll Councillor Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I suppose a bit of a finicky question. We obviously investments do carry risk, and it's right that we invest in the strongest investments we can, which is why we say A-. What happens if an investment that we're involved in drops below A-, and how does Treasury Management react? And as we're at the lower level of strong, is it worth, I won't do it today, but worth rewording that so there's a bit more wiggle room in that for Treasury Management, so just in case it does drop below from strong to adequate? Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Pratt. Caris, please.
Thank you for that question, and you're absolutely right that we're only investing in things that have got a very high credit rating. We are monitoring that via our Treasury Management advisors all of the time. So if there is any indication that there is a problem with any of the investments, we wouldn't place with them. I think it's important to note that if you look at the year-end report, most of our money is either placed with a bank or it's placed with a local authority. And nobody's going to allow a local authority to go bankrupt. However, we do as well know of those local authorities where they do have financial problems, and we are not placing with those authorities at the current time, and we won't do until we know that they're back on a stable financial footing. So I think we're always reviewing the marketplace, and just to reassure you really, our money is always in stable local authorities or in banks, and it is accessible for us should we need to take it out.
Thank you for that, Caris. And of course, that monitoring takes place on a daily basis, doesn't it? Councillor Davis, Councillor Paul Davis.
Yes, thanks, Chair. You've answered part of what I was going to ask, Caris. Where is our money? It's basically in these safe, sort of bank and other stable councils. But to go back to the point of we'd all like to think, take risks and sort of buy a building and let it out and make lots of money from it. I get that. That's a great laudable, aim, I suppose, especially makes us money. But am I right in saying that there have been councils in England who have done sort of similar projects, bought sort of hotels and whatnot, and one or two of them are the ones who have to issue notices of 114 notices. Am I right in saying that? So that's the risk of that, which is the other side of that laudable aim of investing to sort of grow. So,
thank you, Councillor Davis. Caris, please.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Yes, that's absolutely right. In England, authorities have been more willing to invest in those kind of projects in good faith. But as you said, a number of them who are now struggling with Section 114 notices is because their level of borrowing has been very, very high, and what they invested in hasn't delivered in the way that they thought. But it's important to note that since that's happened, the guidance that we work to with regards to Treasury Management has been tightened up. So that actually, if we were to invest in something like that and borrow, we would no longer be able to access borrowing monies from the PWLB, and that would put things like our school modernisation programme in jeopardy. So actually, with the new guidance on borrowing, it's not something that we could do anymore anyway.
Thank you for that, Caris. And then lastly, Councillor Griffiths, please. He's frozen. Is he frozen, Councillor Griffiths?
Apologies, I was stuck on mute. It was a response to Councillor Davis. I think most of the councils that have problems were borrowing purely on commercial grounds, so building blocks or office blocks that they could never let out. I think the suggestion I was making a little bit earlier was more about investing to save our internal costs, which is, I think, a different business idea. So I think that's something that maybe we can follow up in the future meeting. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Griffiths, I can't see any other indications from members that they wish to speak. So we will now move to the recommendation. So do I have agreement with from all members for the recommendations to note the reports? Yes, thank you, colleagues. In which case we will move on to the questions from members. You will have received the written responses to those questions. The first question is from Councillor Walter to the leader. You've had the response, Councillor Walter. Do you have a supplementary question for the leader, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And firstly, can I thank the officers that will have put this response together, given the limitations we know about on the back-end reporting of the member referral system. Question to the leader would be, could he outline any plans that there may be for future system development? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Leader, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walter, for the question. And as you see in the answer there, the number of referrals, that's just one part of it. What we haven't got and what we do need is for system development moving forward is the ability to analyse and produce performance reports on where all the referrals are, which ones are outstanding, where we are, how long they've been, and that's something that I've been nagging for myself for quite a while now. But that's going to come down to cost, because the current system, unfortunately, does not produce performance reports for directorates and for directors and for all staff. But also for members, we should be able to have a performance report. And that's something going forward. We're going to keep pushing to see how best we can achieve that with spending the least amount possible to do it. Because currently, I'm led to believe, to produce a report, it requires some bespoke work by IT magicians who can do their magic with spreadsheets or whatever. And that's not good enough. It should be part and parcel of the system from day one, but it wasn't. It was an option that wasn't purchased. Currently, there's lots of outstanding referrals as well. The picture is a bit blurred because there are many, many outstanding referrals that will not be closed by some members purely because they don't like the answer, or don't accept the answer on the referral, and that's not good enough either. So the system is it's not giving a true picture because of members not closing down referrals just because they don't like the answer, and that's not a reason not to close it. We're not going to have the answer you want on every question you ask and every referral you submit, but we do need to develop a system further. And I'm going to work with officers and the chief executive to see if we can get a better way, an efficient way of having performance data on a regular basis, both for officers and members.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Leader. The next question was from Councillor Ian Williams. And do you have a supplementary question, please, Councillor Williams?
I do, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
Turn my camera on. Thank you. I think Councillor Howard Williams is not in attendance today.
Oh, it's good. No, the question would be addressed to Councillor Capros and Councillor Evans.
Right. As from the 1st of April 2023, this authority became real living wage employers, and yet 15 months up the road, and we are still procuring businesses to carry out our outsourced services who aren't signed up to the real living wage.
Oh, right.
Some people might consider this hypocrisy as more and more services are becoming outsourced. When will this authority insist on any company that is on the procurement list having to be real living wage employers?
Okay, thank you for that supplementary question. Councillor Williams, I will now bring in Councillor Evans to respond to that supplementary question.
Well, firstly, thank you, Councillor Williams, for the question. Just to make you aware, we have a socially responsible procurement strategy and a delivery plan for the strategy. Under Objective 2 of the plan, we have a couple of actions to increase living wage accredited suppliers. Since the Council has become a real living wage employer, it has carried out a survey and also includes in-tender documentation for information. We ask questions in our tender documentation. However, we cannot put this as a pass or fail question, as the real living wage accreditation does not fall under legislation. Just to make you aware as well, there is new legislation with regards to procurement in October. Hence, the strategy will be reviewed and amended accordingly to reflect this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. So we'll now have the next question, and that was from Councillor Thomas to the leader. Councillor Thomas, do you have a supplementary question, please?
I do. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I'm decided I'm going to be considerably more concise in my question than I was originally going to. But in the leader's response to my initial question, he did say that there are pockets within the authority where communication could be improved. And unfortunately, I fear that they are considerably larger than pockets. I won't name them, but suffice to say there are concerns in that regard. Turning to one area that I'm particularly concerned about is the statutory function of responding to freedom of information requests as well. Data that I have obtained has found that as of last year, there were 1,882 freedom of information requests to the county borough. Of that, 758 was responded to past the statutory deadline of 21 days. That's actually 40% that were late. I myself have had to get the intervention of the ICO office as well. So this is a major concern. But I'd like to ask the leader, given that this is a statutory service, does he agree that this sort of level of performance undermines public confidence in this authority to be open and transparent? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Leader, please.
Simple answer is no. Don't agree that it undermines people's confidence, public's confidence. What we do need to do is perform better, but we are performing with reduced resources, which we meeting after meeting, with the last 10, 14 years, the resources have been reduced by 80 million. So, okay, it's not great that we haven't responded in accordance with the numbers you get for free information requests, but quite often as well, we had to blame in this chamber, because quite often I bet a lot of those requests may come from members who could obtain their information through other sources, or doing their research themselves, or just asking the question directly to officers or putting a referral. But sometimes we do have a tendency to put FOIs after FOIs, and it doesn't help the case. That's not to say there's not a reason to do them, and there are genuine reasons to do FOIs, and I wasn't aware of the numbers that you've quoted, but I don't agree that it undermines the confidence, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure we do respond in a more timely manner and deal with customer service and customer responses, whether that's the public or ourselves as members.
Thank you for that, leader. And the final question on today's agenda was from Councillor Martin Williams to the leader. You've had the response, Councillor Williams. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Things have moved on since I put this in, and that's reflected in the answer. So I do say thank you for the answer. But my supplementary is this: notwithstanding the fact that we've had a long debate about the condition of our waste collection fleet, to what extent does the leader feel that the fact that we own the fleet and it's operated by Plan B, to what extent does he think that that impairs our ability to hold them to account truly for their performance, and does it perhaps give them an opportunity to hide behind the performance of our fleet as opposed to their true performance in administrating the contract, operating the contract, I should have said, sorry.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Leader, please.
Yep. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Williams. I don't think it impairs us holding them to account, because the contract they signed up to, the conditions within there, there's up to a certain value they have to provide repairs on vehicles. It's not for us to produce the repairs. There were issues and have been issues, as we're all aware of, with the timeliness of repairs being made. We own the vehicles, but they are responsible for the day-to-day operating, and we'll hold them to account through the terms and conditions within the contract, as you've seen in the answer. That's already taking place through penalties, and that will continue to take place if they don't perform. That's why we have a contractual relationship with them, and we'll hold them to account through that.
Thank you, Leader. That concludes the questions. We now will move on to urgent items. I've received no urgent business for today's meeting, and therefore we will progress to the 12th item on today's agenda, and that is the proposal to exclude the public from the next part of the meeting. And I will ask the Council's Monitoring Officer to briefly explain the public interest test that we now need to apply as members. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Members, you've been through this test before, and it's set out for you in your papers for you. Council are being asked today to consider the next report before them in closed session. In my opinion, the information in the report satisfies the test for exempt information, and therefore Council must consider whether the need to maintain confidentiality in this report outweighs the public interest in knowing the detail that's included in the report. I therefore ask you to apply the public interest test and determine whether or not you wish to hear this next item in closed session. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Do I have a mover?
I move, yeah.
You moved that, and I have
I'll
a seconder. Is everyone in agreement?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues. We will now go into closed session to consider the exempt report. Please, could anyone in attendance at the meeting, other than members and senior officers, now leave the meeting? Please also note that live transmission of the meeting will now be concluded. I can confirm there are no members sitting in the public gallery currently.